Well, let's join Rapelang now and get an update on this story. Is our correspondent, Rapelang Radebe. Rapelang, thanks so much indeed for joining us. Are we any clearer about what is at the heart of this case? I think all of us were as surprised as Mr. Metsing himself that he gets this hit on his passport and then he gets picked up.
Yeah, it's a complex one, Peter, and good evening to our viewers. So, he must have gotten a shock of his life, especially when you now get to understand that the charges that were preferred related to an incident of the 2018, something that SADC had actually intervened. And I think, like Lesotho saying, they had sort of lost interest in that matter. We had actually thought, because the existing warrant of arrest that is still standing is the one that is relating to his ongoing case of high treason. Now, that has been a very controversial one because if you go back to 2014, we will remember that he was co-accused with others, Sidibe Muchoborane, who is now the leader of his own party, MEC. They are facing that particular one. It was challenged in court, and the court decided that they need to stand trial. When he did not show up in court, a warrant of arrest was released. This is when he fled Lesotho and came to South Africa. We had thought it's something to relate to that, but only to find that it is charges of evasion of tax, defeating the end of justice, corruption, something that is related to the 2018 pit.
The question then becomes, why 4 years later?
We really were looking for answers because we were kept, the name that was being mentioned was one investigating officer. I don't know whether from the Hawks or from the SABC, who is the one who is in charge of the investigations. We were told he's in Pretoria. He will be coming to join, and he had actually opposed bail of Mr. Metsing, which is why he was arrested on Saturday, slept in custody, and went to court yesterday on Monday. When today that same officer did not show up, I think the prosecution was not in a position to oppose bail, so they agreed that they will now grant him bail. He will show for a remand on the 2nd of August to try and see whether the state would have, at that particular time, made some presentations that can at least explain or keep us in light as to what are the charges that led his passport to generate, because he has been crossing in and out of the country. He says at one point he had gone to Malawi late in December. He was a bit shocked when he tried to renew his stay in South Africa, that there was a hit that immediately warranted that South African police act on it and detain him.
He must be, I'm guessing, wondering if this isn't all political. Are there any hints that there could be more to this?
Well, with Lesotho going to elections in the next few months, you cannot rule out anything. But one would think South Africa is beyond that. They could not meddle. For what it's worth, this is the former Deputy Prime Minister of Lesotho. This is the leader of the party. And you would think politics would be the last thing that would be on the mind, either from the South African Police Service, from the Hawks. I doubt immigration would even have an interest, because all they do is when a passport generates a hit, it is picked up on the other side by the South African police, who will do their job, because it is their job that if there is a hit, they need to act accordingly, because they never know the politics that go behind. So I think the Pretoria office is here to give us some explanation as to what could have led, because he holds also the diplomatic passport. Well, of course, this time I think because they tried to reserve it, not to use it all the time and fill it with stamps, This time he was using his private passport. So there are still some questions that we will need to hear, because in court we kept having correspondence of somebody who knows better, who will then present evidence. And then at some point we learned that Lesotho actually wrote that in this particular instance that this case is being referred to, it has lost interest in that particular case. Other than that, it has really, they said it's moot. It has been overtaken by circumstances.
What has Mr. Metsing himself been saying to explain all of this? Well,
he's a politician. He will raise all sorts of allegations also, because the one that really got dominant was that there are now death threats on his life, which is one of the reasons that he left Lesotho and came to South Africa. But he has been in South Africa, I don't know for how long. We have not even had any released statement from police that they have now handed over his case to Interpol to intervene. So when this particular arrest, everybody just thought it is in relation to that particular case, because I think either today or tomorrow that case was supposed to go to court. And when we learned that it is something to do with the case of the 2018, even he himself says he was pretty shocked, because he had been doing this for he's been staying in South Africa for some time. But you'll understand that most of the situations, people use the 30 days visa period to come in and out because of the proximity of the two countries together. So it's almost a bit of a standard process that many people who want to spend more time in South Africa will use that particular visa to come in and out. But if you stay for close to a month, then you still need to cross into Lesotho such that you get a renewal when you come back to stay without exceeding your stay.
All right. So what are we expecting will happen then in the next layers of this case?
Yeah, it's a guessing game, a very complex one, I must say, because the question is, well, South Africa says they are convinced they know where he stays, he's not a flight risk, therefore they released him on a 4,000 bail, demanding that he reports to South African police at least once a month. The question is whether does he now want to go back to Lesotho, because one of the mitigating circumstances when he presented his bail was that it's elections time, he needs to be canvassing on behalf of this party. Will now Lesotho activate suddenly a warrant of arrest that is still pending, or will there be some political decision that will be reached such that Justice Duhamazane can ask that they halt all politically related cases such that the reforms process can run a bit smooth. All these cases can at least be pursued after the elections. But there was also another side of people who are already in custody waiting for this particular case, says there cannot be a double standards when it comes to justice. The politicians seems to have it easy, but others have been languishing in jail for close to a year or two now. Now, the question is whether what will happen? We really are watching, because will he be arrested when he goes to Lesotho, or will they just, they have lost interest for most of the time. Will they now pursue it? Go into elections? Anything is possible.
Especially in this tiny mountain kingdom that punches above its weight in generating news. Rapelang, we'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
This is stuff movies are made of.
That's Rapelang Radebe, our correspondent in Maseru, keeping us up to date with this curious case of the former Deputy Prime Minister Mothejoa Metsing.